Residents and community are our main focus and concern. As this incident has been ongoing, my office has been in constant contact with the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality and the Texas Railroad Commission to get updates and monitor the situation. I have been also in contact with the Fort Bend County Office of Emergency Management and the City of Houston Office of Emergency Management, and you will hear from these representatives today. The Texas Railroad Commission has primary jurisdiction over oil and gas exploration, production, and transportation. The TCEQ has jurisdiction over odors, emissions, and some spills associated with these activities. The Railroad Commission is currently overseeing this incident, and the responsible party is responsible for on-site cleanup of the spill. The TCEQ is responsible for investigating odor complaints from area residents. And we also have a gentleman here today to represent the neighborhood residents. The TCEQ has received numerous odor complaints and began conducting odor survey investigations on Thursday, December the 7th. To this day, they are still monitoring the air and their investigation is ongoing. I invited the two agencies to participate in this press conference to provide an update, but neither agency was able to join us. However, I'm very proud, and I will disclose to you, they said they couldn't join because they're currently ongoing investigations. But they did provide me with a written statement that I would like to read. The first one, and this is today, from the Railroad Commission of Texas. The Railroad Commission was notified by the operator, IWI Operating LLC, of a well control issue at approximately 3:50 p.m. on Wednesday, December the 6th, and immediately dispatched an inspector to the site. The well was brought under control at approximately 12:55 a.m. on December the 7th. The Railroad Commission inspectors were present as well was secured and continue to monitor cleanup operations. Protection of public safety and the environment is our highest priority. The RRC maintains jurisdiction over drilling, production, and transportation of crude oil and natural gas and associated oil field waste, while the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality has jurisdiction over air quality. RRC rules require the operator to contain all freestanding fluids and remediate the impacted area. The RRC oversees all phases of this process to ensure each step is done in compliance with state statutes and rules of the agency. As of this morning, RRC officials estimate the cleanup is approximately 70% complete. 70% complete. The well remains under control and spill fluids are contained. Our inspectors have found no evidence of the spill impacting area waterways, homes, or public land. Once the cleanup is complete, the operator will be required to file a report with the Commission detailing the crude oil amount spilled, recovered, and not recovered, as well as the cause of the spill. As of December 14th, approximately 5,700 barrels of crude oil and water mixture had been recovered. Approximately 1,000 cubic yards of crude oil impacted soil has been transported from the site. Under RRC rules, any recovered waste material must be transported either to an RRC permitted or TCEQ permitted commercial waste facility. Inspectors from RRC have regularly been at the site overseeing cleanup activities and will continue to monitor the operator's progress for compliance. Members of the public who have questions regarding the cleanup activities should contact RRC District Office at 713-869-5001. For media inquiries, please contact Ramona Nye at 512-463-4817. And that is the report as of today from the Texas Railroad Commission. And finally, the report from the TCEQ. In response to an oil well blowout In this letter dated December 14, 2017, in response to an oil well blowout incident that occurred near McCard Road in Fort Bend County on December 6, 2017, the TCEQ is coordinating with the Railroad Commission of Texas, the lead agency. The TCEQ is conducting odor survey investigations in response to complaints from residents of Fort Bend County. The TCEQ began conducting odor survey investigations on Thursday, December 7, 2017. As part of the investigations, the TCEQ investigators are monitoring the air in the area to survey for and identify potential emissions and any unsafe conditions. As of December 13, 2017, when TCEQ staff have noted odors, low levels of hydrogen sulfide have been detected below levels that would be a health concern or an immediate threat to public health and safety. H2S produces a very strong rotten egg smell. It can be odorous even at very low concentrations, or may smell like natural gas. H2S can be smelled at much lower concentrations than concentrations at which adverse health effects such as mild respiratory effects and asthmatics may occur. Odorous levels are not necessarily harmful levels, and this is an important note. However, persistent strong odors have the potential to cause indirect odor-related health effects such as headaches and nausea. The TCEQ has communicated with the Fort Bend County Office of Emergency Management, the Fort Bend County Fire Marshal, which are present behind us, and the Missouri City Fire Department. The TCEQ will continue to conduct odor surveys for the duration of this event and continue to respond to odor complaints. And that concludes the report from the Railroad Commission and the TCEQ. And so what I want to do is to really briefly tell you the reason why we assembled all of the people here. We know that there's a lot of residents that have concerns, many of the constituents that we represent, business owners, the schools for the safety of the children and the air that they breathe. We didn't want people to have speculation, innuendo, rumor mills. There's a lot of gossip on the streets about what's going on. We wanted to bring the experts here to give out the facts. We want it to be transparent, we want it to be open, and we want it to be accountable in terms of what is taking place so that the public can feel a sense of security. As the ranking member of the House Environmental Regulation Committee, having served 4 consecutive terms on the Environmental Regulation Committee, I am very aware and too often hear the horror stories of the dangers of gas leaks and chemical spills and the potential dangerous health effects that can happen following these incidents. Last session, I filed House Bill 2753. This legislation would have required TCEQ to examine their rules on inspections and leak detection to see if improvements could be made, precisely to avoid these types of accidents and fugitive emissions. Unfortunately, my legislation did not pass. So if I'm reelected, I will be pre-filing this legislation again next November and make it one of my must-pass priority bills. This morning, I spoke with R.B. Rustin, who is the on-site person for IWI Operating LLC, who is overseeing the cleanup for the company. He assured me that their crews were working around the clock to complete the cleanup. He feels assured that the cleanup will be complete by the end of next week. At this time, I would like to bring up Houston City Council member Larry Green from District K that has oversight of the Houston part of Fort Bend to give us some remarks as he has been diligently, him and his staff have been working on this. Council member Larry Green.
Thank you, Representative Reynolds, for having us out, and thanks for inviting us, and thank you for the opportunity to give an update to the community as to what's transpiring here on site and the City of Houston's role. We are currently, this particular site is not currently in the City of Houston, but the City of Houston is right across the street. So obviously our residents are feeling the effect the feeling the effect of the gas leak, the odor and smell, and just to give an update as to the City of Houston's participation pursuant to our Houston Fire Department and Assistant Chief Griffin. Our first report of the issue came on December 6th at 4:16. Call came in from a cellular caller at the location, stated they needed the Houston Fire Department to respond to stand by at McCard Road, at McCard Road at the Fort Bend Tollway for an oil blowout on a drilling rig. The caller gave the gate code, so I'm assuming he was an employee or someone familiar with the site. The call was originally coded as a report of a chemical spill, and learner learned it was petroleum when units arrived on this location. The Houston Fire Department sent Engine 59 to this location, and Engine 59, once on location, requested a hazmat response, which included District 59, Engine 48, Hazmat Unit Number 1, Foam 22, Ambulance 80, Safety 24, and Engine 80 eventually was replaced by Engine 48. Pearland did assist with the tanker truck, and the hazmat units as well arrived on the scene after the HFD hazmat. After speaking with the Houston Fire Department units on location, they advised that the actual site of the release was west of the tollway and south of McCard, which would place it in Fort Bend County. CAD FM 2234 at Fort Bend Tollway was not within the City of Houston, and everything south of FM 2234 was in Fort Bend County. Since the original call, Houston Fire Department has received 37 calls of service requesting the Houston Fire Department to respond for a smell or unknown gas leak. So we continually, at the City of Houston, because of jurisdictional issues, turn the investigation over to TCQ. However, the City of Houston continues to monitor it. We have with us representatives from the Houston Hazmat with us, as well as the Houston Health and Human Services Department, who are monitoring this and who are staying in touch with the investigation. And as soon as we get additional information, we will make that information known to our residents to keep them abreast. We have our experts here to answer any questions to you, and when we get to that portion, we'll open it up.
Thank you, Councilmember Green. Now I would like to introduce Jeff Braun with the Emergency Management Coordinator for the Fort Bend County Office of Emergency Management.
Thank you. I'm just going to be brief. We're going to have the County Fire Marshal, Mark Flathouse, talk about the specific issues of response from Fort Bend County out to the scene. But I did want to reassure everybody that Judge Hebert as well has been in contact with the TCEQ, given the number of calls that were received. And just like the letter from the TCEQ indicated, we've been in constant contact with TCEQ and Texas Railroad Commission from our office and from the Fire Marshal's office to ensure that the monitoring is continuing and ensuring that the IWR operation is going to be nearing an end and has been taking care of the product that is on the ground and has been released. So at this point, that's all I really want to say. We were more in a coordination side from the information and making sure information was posted on the county's website.
Thank you. Next, I would like to introduce Mark Flathouse. He's the Fort Bend County Fire Marshal, and he's been working extensively on this. Thank you. Come up, Mark.
Mark Flathouse, Fort Bend County Fire Marshal. Want to say that one of the two responsibilities of this incident is, number one, the coordination with Fort Bend County Fire Response, working with the City of Houston and also with Missouri City Fire Department, Pearland Fire Department, and Fresno Volunteer Fire Department. Making sure and reassuring, the other thing is Fort Bend County Hazmat Response. We worked very well with the City of Houston and the coordination of that to make sure that monitoring was done throughout the event as quickly as we could set up the monitors to make sure that in all surrounding areas and any calls that Fort Bend County received that we maintained monitoring that until other services were to release us through the company part of the cleanup. The other aspect is make sure that the response in the evening that took place, the communication between not only the City of Houston but also the Fort Bend County Fire Departments for the initial response and the number of units that were taking place. It didn't matter about jurisdictional lines. What mattered was the best for the citizens and making sure that we were there to not only monitor but also be there in case anything took place. So great partnership between those departments that were mentioned. Thank you.
Now, because the TCEQ couldn't be here today, I wanted to make sure that we had a subject matter experts to be able to put it in layman's terms for the public. Because the main thing, this is for the public. We want the residents to understand what these odors and these chemicals mean. And so I would like to introduce an expert in this field, Dr. Neil Carman, Clean Air Program Director for the Lone Star chapter of Sierra Club, and he's a former TCEQ investigator. Dr. Carman worked for TCEQ for 12 years as a field investigator in the Permian Basin around thousands of H2S sources and dealing with H2S issues routinely. So this is a preeminent expert that has done work for TCEQ, and now he does it in the public sector, in the private sector. So Dr. Carman, would you please come up?
Thank you. I worked for the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality for 12 years, and I dealt with over 1,000 citizen complaints regarding hydrogen sulfide. It's an extremely toxic gas, and at low levels it causes headaches, nausea, and other health effects. It's also known to linger around for quite a while because it's heavier than air. One of the concerns about children is that they're, because of their developing brain and nervous system, they're extremely vulnerable to any kind of toxic air pollution. Studies going back over the last 20 to 25 years show that children are the most vulnerable to the effects of toxic air pollution. Hydrogen sulfide is a toxic air pollutant. It has a certain amount of regulations in Texas. The TCQ has a 30-minute standard. But actually, they were going to change that standard in 1992 to a much stricter one because it has health effects at very low odor levels. Near the odor threshold, it will cause headaches. So I'm here because I'm deeply concerned about children in the area that may have breathed hydrogen sulfide gas. Besides headaches and nausea, it can affect their memory. It has effects that are actually similar to hydrogen cyanide. So it's not just an odor issue, it's an issue of toxic exposure to a developing brain, a developing nervous system, and how sensitive the children are. So I think that we need to do a much better job of protecting children's health with hydrogen sulfide and the other chemicals that can be emitted from these wells, such as benzene and toluene, naphthalene, xylene, and other harmful chemicals. I will be happy to take any questions. Thank you.
You know, you said that they're saying that there are no levels that are harmful to the public. Is that true?
Well, I would disagree with that based on my experience. I experienced many headaches with hydrogen sulfide gas as a state inspector. And children are much more vulnerable to the effects of toxic air pollution. There's hundreds of studies that have shown this around the United States, that children, because they're so small, they have higher breathing rates per minute. They take in more air pollution per pound of body weight than an adult. So they're very vulnerable to toxic air pollution.
In this situation, would you say they are vulnerable? In this specific situation, is it an issue?
I'm very concerned about if the children are having headaches and health effects like this, then this is more than just an odor problem. This is an effect of toxic air pollution assault on children and possibly even adults.
What about there's hundreds of homes over here. Everybody's called it for days on end. I mean, there's kids that can't tell you they have a headache. What are we talking about, 5-10 miles from here? How does
Well, at this time of year, hydrogen sulfide, because it's heavier than air, it stays closer to the ground level. This is what the research shows. And then as the temperatures pick up in the daytime, it will disperse somewhat better, but it's a bigger problem in the winter months. And the TCQ knows this because they get bombarded with a lot more complaints statewide during the winter months from hydrogen sulfide gas exposures. So I'm very concerned about this gas because it's so toxic and the effects. So in my view, it's much more than just an odor problem. In the industry, it's called an acid gas. It corrodes steel. I saw it eat through solid steel tanks and materials. It will corrode almost any type of metal. It's extremely acidic. It's very corrosive. It's very harmful to our bodies.
In your opinion, you see who's there, this house is there, this house is there, the tree. Are these wells too close to these homes?
I think it's possible that the wells are too close and that we need to do a much better job in Houston and Texas statewide in protecting children and public health from hydrogen sulfide and toxic gases from these oil wells. We don't do.
A safe distance. How far away from developments?
Well, people should be, probably at least a quarter to a half a mile away, and maybe even more. It depends upon what's in these wells, how high is the hydrogen sulfide concentration, and factors like that.
So what should families do in this situation to mitigate the effects that have already happened?
Well, that's a whole nother question, because then you're talking about dealing with the after effects of the exposures. They don't really have a lot of treatment protocols. That kind of becomes potentially a medical issue, and that's a whole nother area.
Why do you think this area was told the day that it happened and the day after that? Why do you think we were told that once we breathe in is okay?
Well, I disagree with that. I think that the agencies need to err on the side of caution because hydrogen sulfide is extremely toxic. At higher levels, it can be deadly. I don't know that there's deadly levels in this well or in this field, but it certainly is a concern that it's going to cause a lot of health effects. There's even workers who've had exposures, and then later on they've had serious heart attacks. So it definitely attacks the brain and the nervous system.
Do you think people were lied to last week when they said what we're smelling is okay?
Well, I don't think people were told the whole truth, okay? And so I'm concerned that there were some misrepresentations that were made to the public about hydrogen sulfide gas.
So how long of an exposure will it take to have negative effects for a person? 5 minutes, 10 minutes, hours?
It only takes a single breath of hydrogen sulfide gas. It goes into the blood, it impacts the red blood cells, it can go into the brain and cause effects there. So it's well known in the industry and the regulatory agencies that it takes very little hydrogen sulfide gas to cause adverse health effects. This has been a major concern statewide, not just with lethal exposure levels, which might not be the situation here, but with lower levels in terms of adverse health effects. So we haven't done a good enough job in Texas in protecting public health from hydrogen sulfide gas.
Is there a way to tell how much hydrogen sulfide gas has gotten back in this area? Is there any way to reliably measure?
Well, yes, they've been measuring hydrogen sulfide gas since the 1970s. So that's nothing new. There's all kinds of monitoring devices, and so that there should be a lot more monitoring done in this area on a 24/7 basis to determine how much is in the area. You can also look at how much was in that well. What was the parts per million concentration, and you can do a model in terms of predicting what were the levels that would have impacted the community in terms of the atmospheric conditions and the temperature and the H2S concentrations.
Can you spell your name for me?
It's Neil, Neil Carman.
And just while you're here, to make sure that he was prepared for the meeting today, I shared with him the information that TCEQ sent to me so that he can review it. So he's given his opinion as I guess as an expert, but obviously his opinion contradicts what TCEQ wrote in their reports. So I just want to say that.
I will just emphasize that I think that the TCQ statewide standard, which is 80 parts per billion for 30 minutes, is really not protective. And that fact is borne out in 1992. The agency attempted to change the standard to 10 parts per billion because of concerns about headaches down to that level. But industry opposed it, so they've kept the weaker standard at 80 parts per billion for 30 minutes. It's not protective of public health if you look at other standards around the country. So we're not doing a good job in Texas in protecting the public from the adverse effects of hydrogen sulfide gas.
Magic wand, would you shut this operation down right now?
Well, I would, until they determine how much hydrogen sulfide is in there and what they're going to do to control it. It's a serious problem in this type of industry, and there's other industries too that have hydrogen sulfide issues.
Does everybody standing here agree? Like from Fort Bend, what he's saying? Do you guys agree with what he's saying? Or
I live 3 miles south, and I've been smelling it for over a week.
right.
Judge Joe Clauser, speak up and tell them who you are.
I'm Judge Clauser, Justice of the Peace in Fort Bend County Precinct 2. I live 3 miles south. I've got 2 grandkids who are 3 miles south. I've got 2 grandkids who are 5 miles south in Sienna Plantation. And we've been smelling this too long. And I'm very much concerned. I wasn't concerned when I thought it was going to be 1 or 2 days, but it's been over a week now. And so I'm very much concerned. I'm getting slight headaches now, and I'm very much, I want to know when. When is it going to stop? Thank you. Any other questions? Yeah, I haven't had any major complaints. And so I'm just concerned whether they are really aware of their physical condition, or can explain it,
There were complaints reported from Bragg Elementary School that were made, and TCEQ went there and did testing, and they said that the levels were below detection. I mean, in other words, they were safe. That's what TCEQ gave the assurance to me when they made the report. And they had concerns from the local elementary school. So
When
which
was
is
that?
less than a mouth. That was 2 days ago. That was 2 days ago.
When you hear your expert here saying this kind of stuff, what's your reaction?
I'm very alarmed. I mean, this is just. I mean, I just shared all this information with him, so a lot of this just came to light in real time. So he hadn't disclosed everything that he just disclosed now. He said he had some concerns, but he was reviewing the information. So I'm really very, very. There's a heightened awareness. Now I'm more concerned and more alarmed, and I intend to take what he said back directly to the Director of Air Compliance with the TCEQ and the Texas Railroad Commission.
And let me just say too, for the city of Houston, we have Dexter Johnson here, HSD, with regard to our monitoring. We began monitoring the process, but pursuant to protocol, turned it over to TCEQ because TCEQ has jurisdiction over these matters. But I think after hearing all of this, we're going to just go ahead on and do our monitoring and continue to monitor as our expert spoke, and get and do our own independent modeling and make sure that our residents are safe, so we can have real-time data. And if in fact we need to put any announcements out, that's what we'll do. But I wanted you guys to kind of listen to Dr. for a second.
Well, the question I have for you is, you can do all your own monitoring, but
Yes.
you don't have the authority to shut this down, do you?
No, we don't. We don't.
So what should people do now? Obviously, he's saying that there could be effects, long-term effects, as much as even just a breath of it, and children are at risk now. What should people do? The people who are watching here saying, what the heck? What now?
Absolutely. Well, what we will do, we will put out a bulletin for our residents, for our children to stay indoors. And what we will do is continue to monitor. And if the levels get to a point where it will require immediate action or remediation, we will do that. We'll also contact the state and the governor's office to see if we can get some assistance with regard to the remediation effort, if there's any way it can be expedited. Because, as Judge Clouser said, it has been too long.
State Rep, do you think that the system has failed the people? Hearing what he has said, do you think that the system didn't work? Because monitoring,
Sure.
How is it that he is able to say this, but we've been monitoring for more than a week now?
Out of an abundance of caution, I'm totally alarmed by the findings and the remarks of Dr. Mark Neal. I'm very concerned. I'm going to take those concerns immediately to TCEQ, which they're not here today, but I'm going to share those concerns with them immediately upon the end of this press conference. Public safety is always paramount. That's the number one concern. Industry is secondary. The company making a profit is secondary. The first and foremost is the public safety and health and welfare of the citizens that live in this area. And we're going to make sure that following this press conference that we follow up and follow through. He raised some very serious concerns that hasn't been independently verified. I'm only going based on what he said. He is a former TCEQ worker that has expertise. So again, I just learned that in real time, just like the rest of you. We're going to take that. We take that very seriously. And so TCEQ and the Railroad Commission, they're the Texas state agencies that's charged with the duty and responsibility of oversight. And so if there is a risk to public health, which they assured me with the letters that I read to you that there wasn't, I'm going to go back to them based on his remarks to do some fact checking and to ask them to provide more data, because our public needs to know. And so right now, I'm very concerned. I don't know if the Fort Bend County office is prepared to respond, but I'm very concerned personally, and I'm going to take those concerns back to the TCEQ and the Texas Railroad Commission.
To the emergency management and also the fire marshal, what is your response to this today's finding?
Well, I mean, obviously, as the representative said, this is new information. Public health and the effects, I'm not a doctor. This is information that we will take back to our staff. In the meantime, the response that has been done the response was done in a manner that was exemplary in terms of the cooperation between all the response agencies. The monitoring's been done. The handover to the TCEQ and the Texas Railroad Commission was done in the manner as quick as possible. And at this point, the TCEQ, obviously I'm not familiar with the 80 parts per million. That's something that's outside of the things that I normally deal with. But this is information we'll take back as well, just as Representative Reynolds has talked about as well.
So what should families do at this point?
Let us hear from Dexter, Captain Johnson.
Good afternoon, Captain Dexter W. Johnson. I'm with the Houston Fire Department, the assistant coordinator for the hazmat team. So, getting this information on the 12th and on the 6th, we responded to this incident in a timely manner. We didn't know if it was OCL outside the city limit or inside the city limits. I did receive a phone call from the assistant chief of Harris County to find out if it was our call or their call. Neither did it matter. We were responding to the incident, and we'll figure all of that out outside. We responded, as they stated earlier, they asked for a hazmat box, which we responded to the incident. Normally what we normally do, and I have our run record, normally what we normally do, we go on there, our actual scene, and our first order of business is detection. Is we want to detect, find out what we're dealing with. So first thing first, when we pull onto the scene, we're going to respond to the actual scene as an emergency. We're going to find out crew accountability, if they have all their members accounted for. And all this is transpired in the next 5-10 minutes, and then we want to find out what's going on as elicited an emergency response. And then we're going to find out on this incident what was the product that was released, because as you stated, it was stated as a chemical release, and it ended up turning into be a oil spill. So then we're going to go from detection into monitoring. We're going to detect it. So what we detected close by was below the level, and that was actually we had a guy to one of our comms guys normally runs a plume with Aloha, and they gave us back a, if you will, a diagram of what we could expect from the area, which was nowhere in the area of the neighborhoods were behind us. So we monitored outside of that neighborhood. We went down the tollway, actually, and also over by Lake Olympia, and we got below levels of parts per million, if you will. So we didn't get any readings over there, but we did get readings by the actual site, the emergency scene that we dictated as our hot zone. Then we want to dictate which way are safe levels, where are the safe levels for the community. All of this transpires all encompassing at one point. So if we are outside the levels, then we want to figure out what we get with the owners of the plant and or the emergency response team that is going to take over this outside of us, which we know is not an emergency, which happens to be the hazmat emergency response team, and then we transferred it over to TCEQ as well as the Railroad Commission. So I just wanted to iterate that. What we got lower levels of explosive limits would be 4% to 45%. That's the ranges. We were nowhere near that, and we were 4% or 45%. Now, what we received on some of the was over there by Lake Olympia was what was it? 120 parts per billion, which translates to 0.120 parts per million. So you have to have at least 1 part per million to get to the 4 parts per million. So we were not receiving anywhere near that parts per million, if you will. You will smell that rotten egg smell. That's normally decaying bacteria or organic waste material that happens when you drill for oil and or waste material. So you will get that smell. As long as these guys are doing remediation, and every time they dig up, you're going to smell that. Now, as Doctor was saying, and I concur with him, when you have these low temperature levels like this in the winter months, you're going to get that low-lying area, and it's going to lay low. So you find it in basement areas and sewer lines and telephone vaults. You'll find it in low-lying areas. It's heavier than air, so it's we consider 1 as your equal level on your density and your specific gravity. It's I want to say it. What is it? 1.2. It's 1.2 on the vapor density, so it's going to be heavier than air. So it's going to lay low, and especially when it's colder, it's going to lay lower. So it's going to not dissipate as much as possible, as much as you would like it to dissipate with these hot temperatures. So that is what we're dealing with. So when we get this north, Arctic wind, you might get the smell and going back in this area, and vice versa. When it goes away, it might start blowing the northerly. So that's what we're smelling. As long as these guys are out here remediating, that's what we're going to smell.
What's your name?
Senior Captain Dexter W. Johnson.
And then, Dr. Carmen, can you just tell us your background? Can you tell us your background and your expertise?
Yes, I have a bachelor's, master's, and a PhD in the biological sciences and chemistry, and I worked 12 years with the TCQ inspecting hundreds of facilities with high levels of hydrogen sulfide gas that were lethal. We went in and we tested them. I also responded to citizen complaints about air pollution from many different kinds of sources. A lot of it involved hydrogen sulfide. That was the most common type of complaint that citizens had in Texas year after year after year, and in the wintertime the complaints about H2S skyrocketed. I've been 25 years with working with Sierra Club as an advocate for better policies, and we knew in 1992 that the Environmental Protection Agency wanted to classify hydrogen sulfide gas as a hazardous air pollutant under the Clean Air Act, but industry didn't like that. And so even today, although certainly EPA wanted to designate H2S as a hazardous air pollutant like benzene and monochloride, mercury, and lead, it's not officially recognized, but it should be, because it's a very toxic gas.
And finally, we have one final speaker today, and we wanted to bring someone here that represented the residents, because it's all about the residents. It's all about the constituents, the people who live in this surrounding area. I want to bring up Carl David Evans, the president of the Fort Bend Super Neighborhood 41, which represents the subdivisions within this area: Quail Run, Quail Glen, Briargate, and the surrounding communities. Carl David Evans.
Thank you, State Representative Ron Reynolds. My name is Carl David Evans, and I am honored to be here, but also a little concerned. Doctor, I'm a little concerned right now. I'm smelling this odor, and I'm wondering, are we safe at this location right now? You can address that later, but I am concerned about it. We represent right at 15 to almost 20 communities in Fort Bend, Houston. We also represent adjoining communities. I've received calls from Shadow Creek. I received calls from Quail Run and out in Missouri City. I received calls. One call say, what are they trying to do? Are they trying to kill us? Do they think we are dumb? We have had problems with the water in the area. We have had problems with the air in the area. We hosted an environmental conference on August the 10th of this year. We was honored to have State Representative Ron Reynolds here. We adopted a clean air and water bill for this area. And one of the I'm just going to read some of the points that we wanted to do as the Super Neighborhood Council. Number one, we wanted to ensure that chemical plants in our communities are meeting the highest standard of safety. Number two, we wanted to continue to address the odor at the Blue Ridge landfill. Number three, we wanted to continue to address the odor issue near the Pearland lift station and the water treatment facility. Assess the impact of contaminants in our local water and air. And we also were concerned about research the unaddressed odors and safety issues that residents have expressed from local pollutants in the air and in the water surrounding us. I was able to reach out to State Representative Ron Reynolds and say, man, you need to call a press conference and let our people know what is happening to us. We are very concerned. I live in Chasewood, only about a mile away. I have had residents calling me in the morning and then at night about this odor. I fellowship with the church right down the street on Sunday. The odor was so toxic in the church. The church was wondering, what shall we do? I am hoping, and what we are trying to do to make sure that we hold our elected officials accountable to the residents, accountable to the children, accountable to the elderly people in our area, to make sure that we are safe.